Before you can install a backdoor on the Linux server, you need to have initial access. So if you never hacked before, this is Kali Linux with all kind of hacking tools. It's a Linux distribution where it comes with many type of hacking tools. And what we can do is get initial access in the server. Now there's many techniques that let you get access to the server. So what we'll do is first scan the server with a tool called nmap. Now this is the server's internet address, so you can always check your server's address, your address with the command ip_show on your server. So if you type that command ip_show, it shows you your server's IP address, internet address. And we'll use the internet address to actually hack. So we type nmap to scan it, then we can see which applications are running. Sorry, I'm already connected. So we type nmap to scan the target server, and it will tell you which applications or services are running on the server. In this case, it's running a web server and an SSH server. So it's running a web server. You'll see here HTTP, that means web, the web protocol. So for this server, we can connect to it. You'll see it's running a web server on that address. So whenever you visit a website, you might have seen http:// in front. So that is means web. It's a web protocol, http://. So it's running a web server and it's running SSH. So SSH is another protocol, SSH:/ instead of http:// it's another protocol, and that allows you to remotely control a computer. Now in order to do that, you can just in Kali connect to that computer with the username, and it will ask a password. Now let's say you don't know that password, so one of the ways to hack a server would be just to do a brute force attack, so randomly try passwords. And you'll see if I try it manually, it would be really slow. Right? We can try randomly passwords, maybe using a list, but it would take ages. So instead you could use a tool like Hydra to brute force it using a password list. So there's a password list by default included in users share word lists. rockutxtgz, we're gonna copy that into our home directory and extract it. So that extracts the file rockutxt. So that should now be here. If I refresh it, you see a lot of files here. .txt, that is a text file with 14 million commonly used passwords. So I can output that. Let's just output that file, rockutxt. Let's go to the home directory. We can output that file, rockutxt, and you'll see that's our 14 million commonly used passwords. So lots and lots of passwords. And what we can do is use a tool called Hydra to attack the server. So we type Hydra -l, the username. So in this case, the username is Ubuntu. You might try to guess the username. -P with the password list, and then we try SSH://, so the protocol SSH with the server's IP address. And what it will do is try every password in this list one by one to log into the server. So we press enter. You'll see now it's cracking. And if the password is in the list, it will give you the passwords. So in this case, we have the login and the password. And the attacker might now knows the passwords, so they can just log into the server with SSH. So now you'll see welcome to your server, in this case Ubuntu. And we have just hacked the server. Now the next thing that the hacker wants to do is install backdoors in the server. So this is just one way that a server can be hacked. It's just a very simple way where we do a brute force attack. We try every password one by one using the tool Hydra. It's just one of the ways a server can be compromised. There's many different ways that a server can be hacked. And now what the hacker will do is of course install many backdoors because they have access and they want to keep access. Now there's different techniques that can be used to gain access into the server for the hacker, which we'll discuss in this course. So many different techniques, and of course you can just go with the passwords in this case, but you might install, or the hacker might install, one or more backdoors into the server that allows for easy login in case, for example, the password changes. They would no longer be able to log in. So many hackers install backdoors in order to keep access into the server at any time. So the backdoor we're going to look at is the SSH, or the Secure Shell backdoor. The SSH backdoor is essentially leaving the backdoors in the user's home directory. And so SSH, or Secure Shell, lets you remotely connect to a computer. So we can say SSH with some username at the server. Let's say they compromised it so they know the password. They would be now remotely controlling the computer through the command line. So for example, they can type the date command or show the current working directory. So with SSH you can remotely control your server. But in order to access now, they need to remember the password, right? We type the password when we are logging in. So they might leave a backdoor that makes it more easy to log in. And it just needs the username and the IP address to log in to the server. So in order to do that, what they can do is generate a so-called SSH key pair. So on their own computer, they might type the command SSH keygen, and that will generate a key pair. And that key pair is just two files. It will generate two files called key pair, and that can be used to log into the server without any password. So we'll say save it into some file name. So let's call it ID backdoor. Then it's possible to add a passphrase, but we're not going to do that because it will be a backdoor. So that's generated two files in the directory .ssh. It's a hidden directory. So if we open the file explorer, you'll have an option to show hidden files. And hidden files or hidden directories start with the dot. So here we have .ssh. And we have these two files which will be our backdoor for SSH. So next thing we will do is copy those two files to the server. So you can do that with the command SSH copy ID. So we'll say the command SSH copy ID -i, then the file, so ID backdoor, then username at the server. That will copy the key pair to the server. So I have to type the password once, and then it says number of keys added 1. So now we would be able to log into the server, or the hacker would be able to log into the server by just typing with username and server IP. And of course, normally it would ask a password, as you just saw. It's prompting for a password, but they can now use the backdoor keys instead. So they type -e /ID backdoor and press enter, and you'll see they're instantly connected. They don't need any password anymore. So now whenever they want to connect to this server, all they're gonna need is those two files in .ssh, so the backdoor files, and then can connect with SSH by specifying that key pair. Now for this to work, it's important that the SSH server actually uses public key authentication. So if we open the file etc sshd config, ssd_config, the configuration file of SSH on the server, it needs to be able to use SSH keys. So it needs this flag, pub key authentication yes. If that is not enabled, then you cannot use this backdoor. But if it is using public key authentication, which usually is always the case, so if this is enabled, so you might find it with a dial sign in front, that means disabled. So if you see it written like this, then it's enabled, and you can use the SSH key backdoor. Now if it's not enabled, you might try to enable it. So you might manually change that and then say restart the SSH server. So that's all it comes to this backdoor. So now whenever the hacker wants to log in, they're just gonna need the SSH key pair. So you'll see left here we have the commands, and on the right you see we have the ID backdoor files which we specify. So this is the home directory, hidden directory SSH, ID backdoor, so that is this file, and then the username at the server. They just press enter and they're instantly connected into the server. So that is a simple backdoor, but of course it is one that is also easy to detect by the owner of the server. So in order to detect, what the server owner can do is look in. So an SSH backdoor is quite easy to install for an attacker, but it's also easy to delete for the system administrator. So in this case, or in any case, the SSH keys are always stored in the directory .ssh. If we list the directories and files with the ls command, you'll see there's a file called authorized keys. And if we output that file, we can actually see the keys. So in this case, there is a key with a user named Kali. So that is really weird why we don't have any user Kali on our system and we don't recognize this SSH key. So what they could do is simply remove that key. So either edit the file and cut it out, or just remove the file completely. So now the system administrator deleted the file. If I list the files, you'll see there's no SSH key here. And if we open a new window and we try to log in, so the hacker tries to log in on the right, SSH -I with the backdoor to the server. You'll see that now they are requiring our passwords. They can no longer log in with just the key. What you can do as well as a system administrator is to disable password login and only allow to log in using SSH keys. So only with your own SSH keys, or you could simply update the password and that way delete the SSH key and update the passwords. Then they're no longer able to log in. So in this case, the hacker needs to type the passwords again, but they know the passwords. So they might simply log in again and reinstall those keys. So in order to really prevent this, what you want to do is to delete the SSH keys. So you'll see I deleted them, and also update the password. So you can say sudo password for your username. Now update the password to something new, something more strong. And now the attacker was trying to connect with the old password. You'll see they can no longer log in. They need the correct password. Alternatively, what you can do is generate your own SSH keys for logging into your server and disabling password login altogether. So that would be a more secure way to go. Either way, you can detect this kind of backdoor checking your directory. So the way this backdoor worked was by copying the SSH keys. So SSH copy ID was the command the attacker used to copy the keys. So ID backdoor to the server. So this is the command they run, of course with the IP address of the server. And then that installed the keys onto the server. You'll see it created this file, authorized keys, in the directory .ssh. That is how the backdoor works. So you can always check if there is an SSH backdoor just by entering the .ssh directory and checking your authorized key file. That might contain that it has a backdoor or not. So another type of backdoor is based on programming language. So it could be a PHP backdoor or some other language. And what of course is necessary is that they run a web server. So the target server should be running a web server for this backdoor to work. So they might be running a web server on their computer, right? So just regular web server showing websites. Now any website is stored in Linux in the directory var www.html. And what they can do is to install a backdoor using any web programming language like PHP or any of the others. So in order for that to work, they need to have write access in this directory or get the system administrator to install that by accident, install the backdoor by accident. So let's say they have write access. They could say create some file, let's say backdoor.php, and in there they'll create a web file, for example in the PHP language, which looks like this. And then any command that is run, they will just load this on the web browser, of course. So /backdoor.php. You'll see now it doesn't do anything. And what they wanted to do is to run commands. So they will want to specify a parameter, for example, command is, and then the command they want to run. And this should then execute the command on the server. So in order to do that, what they can do is simply type echo and then type shell execute and run the command. So this might look a bit cryptic if you never did any programming before. So what this does is it takes the parameter cmd. You'll see we specify the parameter cmd here, $CMD, and it runs that as a shell command, and it then shows the output. So if we save this, you'll see we can now run the ls command, and it shows the output of the command in the web browser. So now we can type any command. You'll see whatever command we type, the browser now runs. So now now we have a backdoor in the programming language, and you'll see it's also the user it's running as. So now it's running as user www.data. So whatever command they type, they can then specify any command here as a parameter, and it's a backdoor into your system, right? Because now they can run any commands on the server. They don't need any password, and they can access it anytime from their web browser. Now, of course, it's not the most easiest interface for the hacker, because they will have to type the commands in the browser every time instead of have a regular terminal shell like this one. So of course this is the kind of terminal the hacker wants, and not type the commands in the web browser. However, this is a backdoor that they can install in order to maintain access in their server, because first they will try to hack into your server, and once they hack your server, they might install one or more backdoors that make it more easy to access your server at any time. So in order for this backdoor to work, of course, PHP needs to be installed on the server. So in this case we have PHP installed. On the server you can install it with sudo apt install php if it's a Ubuntu server. This backdoor now is written in PHP, but of course the same technology or the same idea is possible with other programming language. So maybe they are using ASP.NET or Node.js or something else, but the same idea is possible, where in the URL you type your commands and then the system executes that commands. So this is just a PHP version of this type of backdoor. So it's a web. Now detecting this kind of backdoor also is quite easy as a system administrator. The hacker uses the web URL to type their commands. So for example, commands they're running, they would type as in the URL. And in order to detect that, we can use the logs. So log files in Linux are stored in var log, and you'll see depending on your web server, so you might be running Apache or you might be running Nginx, it doesn't really matter. We can enter the logged files directory of that server, and then there's a file called access.log. We can read that file access.log to see if there is any requests. So in this case what you'll see is very obvious, where we have backdoor.php, so it couldn't be any more obvious. But you also see a command parameter. So it might be that they are doing it more cryptic, right? They might, instead of call it backdoor.php, call it something less obvious. And in this case, you could see based on the command, or you might simply check that script on your server, like what is that script doing there? Is it a backdoor script, or is it maybe something else? So in this case, it's super obvious because it's named backdoor.php. They might rename it to something else. They could also hide the command parameters in a different way, because in this kind of way it's really obvious to read, because it says cmd is, so they might change the parameter to something less obvious. But anyway, you can always detect it in your access.log if you're running a web server. And then if you see any commands in there, it might be that it's as a backdoor running on your Linux server. So quite easy to detect, just check your log files. So if you're running Apache, that is in var log apache2 access.log. For Nginx, there's also a log file in the var log directory. Another type of backdoor with PHP or any programming language you can do is a reverse shell. So in order for this to work, we need to have write access into the web directory again. So inside the directory var www.html, in there we can write a new shell. So for example, call it start.php, whatever. We need to be able to write files in the directory var www.html, and in there we can start a reverse shell. And so what is a reverse shell? So normally from your computer you connect to your server, and then you get a shell where you type the commands. With a reverse shell, that is the opposite. So your target server connects to you, and then you have the shell inside the server. So it's doing it's a shell also, so also a command line interface, but it's the reverse process. So instead of connecting to the server connects to you. And of course, for it to connect to you, your address needs to be publicly accessible. So for example, you need to have a cloud IP address, you need to rent a VPS with Kali Linux on it, and then the target server can connect to you. So we can search the code for reverse shell, and it's possible in many different programming language. So here it says PHP reverse shell. You'll see this is one possible, but what we'll actually search is a reverse shell cheat sheet. Reverse shell can be created in many programming languages, or many scripting language even. You'll see we have this one here, and you'll see we can do it in PHP, in Perl, Node.js, Java. So there's many options for creating a reverse shell. In this case, we'll go for PHP, and we'll copy the code here. Now PHP code is always written like this. So that is just the indication of the start of the PHP file and the end. And we'll just copy and paste that code here for the reverse shell. Sorry. We need to copy this line of text. So you'll see all of the code here that we just copied. And it needs to connect to our IP address. So this is some random IP address and ports. And we need to change that to our IP address. So we're gonna, that might be, most likely that is your cloud IP address. So the IP address of where you're running Kali Linux on DigitalOcean, Vultr, Linode, or wherever you run your Kali Linux server, needs to be a public address and not your local network address. Unless the server is on the same network. If you're on a public Wi-Fi and the server is on the same network, then you can use your network address. So to get your network address, you can type the command ipadder show. So that is the command ipadder show, and you'll see inet with your computer's IP address. So we're gonna copy that. And the port number can be okay, 4242. So save it. And what you need to do is start listening for a connection. So you can do that with the command nc-nlvp and then the same port. So this will start listening. This command starts listening for a connection. Now what you need to do, this is a PHP file we created, start.php, and you'll see the server needs to connect to us, and in order for that script to run, of course we need to load it. So we're gonna to that website and then run the script start.php and see if it works, and you'll see we just got a connection. So the server connected to us, to our attack machine when we loaded the start.php in the browser. So you'll see now we have a shell here, and we can, for example, output etc issue file. You'll see we're inside the Ubuntu server. And now, of course, we can use the shell as if it were our own computer. We can now browse around the computer. So this is one type of backdoor that you can install. Reverse shell. So you can find lots of reverse shell codes online. In this case, this is a reverse shell cheat sheet where we find the codes, or could be, for example, in Bash language, it could be in Java, could be PHP or Perl or whatever runs on the server. So in this case, it's run PHP. We have start.php here, where the reverse shell start.php connects to our attack machine, and then you have complete access to the computer. In this case, the user level data, but we have access into the server. So whenever we want access to the server as a hacker, we start listening for a connection with the netcat commands. And whenever we want the connection, we just load the PHP file and we have access into the server. So this is another type of backdoor you can install that can instantly give you access. It's a reverse shell. So you might have heard of cron jobs. A cron job is just a job that is runs at a specific time and date. So it might run every second or every minute, every hour, or at a specific hour. So what you can do is use cron job to insert your own scripts. For example, we can output etc cron job. You see no such file or directory. And also another way to check is cron tab -e. And we'll ask you to some editor. Let's pick the easiest one. And you can run commands at a specific time and date. For example, they have an example here where they specify the time and the command that should be run. So in this case, it's doing some backup, a backup every weekday at 5 a.m. So that's just an example they give there. And what you can do is to install your own backdoor. So you can say, for example, an asterisk asterisk and then 3 asterisks. And then what you can do is to start your malicious script. So run your malicious script, or it can be from a certain website, right? So you can say load your from your server script and pipe it into Bash. So 2 ways. This would be a more dynamic way because you can then change the script at any time. Or it could be that the script just exists on the server. So and you can say script.sh that you then run. So one possible script to run. So let's save this and we'll create this script. Okay, so you'll see if you make an error, it actually tells you that it has an error. So let's first create the script. What we could do for a script is simply reverse shell. So we could say open script.sh. We write our script. So it's a bash script, and then we start a reverse shell. Reverse shell lets you remotely control the computer. So this could be the script, and this needs then to connect to our service. So on our computer, on our server, we need to start a listener. So we can do that with this command, and let's say port 8080. Then what we'll do is to connect to our computer with the script. So we need to know our computer's IP address. In this case 8.193. You can check your IP address with the command ip-address show, or if you're running Kali in the cloud, choose your cloud IP address. So on your local network, of course, if your target server is not on the same network, you have to use a public IP address. So like a cloud, use Kali in the cloud. So, and the port. So what this script will do is connect to our listener, and then we'll have a shell. So I can run this script, make it executable with chmod, and run it, and you'll see now we instantly have a shell. So that is what the script does, and this shell is of course a shell into the server. So that we now have a script.sh. That is our backdoor. And what you now want to do is use the cron job to always run this script, or every day at a certain time, the script to reconnect to your server. And so you can do that. So let's say we open the cron job again, so cron tab -e. So cron tab -e will open the cron tab configuration. And if you scroll down, you can here type what it should run. So for example, run all the time, and then the program you want to run, for example, the script.sh. And in the case for cron job, you can also schedule those things online. So if you search for cron job, if we search for cron job, for example, crontab.guru, and there's other websites like this, you can specify certain time and date. For example, if we say like this, means every minute. So you can say, if you change those values, you see that you can change when the script should run. So if you just specify asterisks, it means run this script every minute. So let's save it and see if so it says it's connected. So we start listening, and now cron job should run every minute. In a minute or within a minute, we should be automatically connected because it runs the script every minute. So if it runs, you should then have a connection into the server. Now make sure to pipe it into bash. So this is how you could run it every minute. You'll see we were listening for a connection and we got a connection. So now we are inside the server. You'll see home/Ubuntu here. If I type who am I, you'll see we're inside the server. You can also output issue, and you'll see Ubuntu 22 instead of Kali. So this will run every minute, and whenever you want a connection, you would then simply start a listener, and within a minute you would have a new connection into the server. So this is the cron job backdoor. So make sure to pipe the script into bash, and to save and exit, because once you exit, it updates the cron tab if there's any changes. So don't stay in the editor. You want to write your command here. In this case, run the script in the home directory every minute. Save it and exit, and now it would be running once you exit, and you'll see it run again. So now we have a connection into the server again. So cron job is also a very easy way to get access to the server, to an easy backdoor, because all you have to do is start a new listener, and then with the cron job will automatically connect into the server a minute or so later. And so it's another option for a backdoor. Another place you can get a backdoor is in the file .bashrc. So .bashrc is a hidden file notice the dot in the front. So if you just type ls as an administrator in the system or as a hacker in the system, you won't see that file. You have to type ls-al to see the hidden files that start with a dot, and one of them is .bashrc. So bashrc, if the user is using bash, that file is executed whenever you log into the server. So it's basically a script that is run every time you log into your server, and it's a bash script. So what you can do is to modify that bashrc file, and it's particularly sneaky because it's a hidden file. It's a dot in front, so if the system administrator just does ls, it doesn't see that file. Has to specifically do -al to see the bashrc file. And inside the bashrc file, you can of course add any line of code. So we can say open that bashrc file, and you'll see whatever script is in there by default. And in there you can type any command. For example, we could say hacked. And now we log out, log into the server again. So let's say we just log in regularly. And you'll see it run that command. So .bashrc is a bash script that is run every time you log into your server, or every time the system administrator logs into the server. So what they can do, of course this is funny, they can add their own messages, but what you want to have is a backdoor. So you want to maintain access, and what you can do is add a reverse shell. So a reverse shell, what it does is, instead of you connecting to the server connects to you. So you need to be listening on your computer. Now, in the most ideal case, you run Kali in the clouds, where they can instantly connect to your IP address. If you're on the same network, then you can use your network IP. So your network address, if you're on the same network like a public Wi-Fi, and the server is on the same network as you. If it's the public internet, you want your IP address to be publicly accessible. So you might want to run Kali in the cloud, any cloud VPS where you run Kali. So let's make the server connect to our attack machine. So we search for reverse shell cheat sheet, and then search for bash TCP. You'll see many languages that has the reverse shell, and we'll do bash TCP. And then you'll see different stuff here. So you'll want the top one. We add that to the bash script, and here you want to type your own IP address and optionally port. So in this case the server is on the same network as me, so I'm gonna look up my network IP address. So I open a new terminal, and it's a bit too large here, so let me resize. So I'm gonna type IP address show to show the network IP address of my computer, IP address show. Now keep in mind, in this case the server is on the same network as my computer. If the server is somewhere on the internet, then you need to have a public IP address for this to work. So some cloud VPS where you run Kali. So I'm gonna copy this IP address, which is my computer, because the server will connect to my computer. Now the port number you can optionally change. I'm gonna leave it by default. And for the picture, so the server connects to us, so we need to be listening. And you can start listening using the command netcat or nc -nlvp and then the port number. So the port number needs to be the same as the port number you specify in your file. So I'm gonna pick 4242, can be any number until the maximum port of 65,000, I think. So we start listening, and here we have it will connect to our server with the reverse shell command. We save it, exit. Now bashrc runs every time the system administrator connects to the server. So now we are just listening for a connection on our computer, on our attacker machine, and once the system administrator connects to a server, the server will automatically connect to our attack machine with bashrc. So they're gonna connect, and you'll see on the right we have our attack machine that's listening, and on the left we have the system administrator connecting. They might type the wrong password. Okay, the system administrator connected, And what you'll see here is that on our attack machine, we instantly got access. It started a reverse shell. So it connected to our attack machine, and our attack machine can now remotely control the server. So you'll see Ubuntu here. We are now inside the server. So now we can run commands as if we are the same user. One thing to notice is that the system administrator, they logged in. However, they cannot do anything. They just see hacked here. So